Most people over 60 are losing something they cannot see. Not slowly and dramatically, the way a serious illness announces itself. Quietly, invisibly, night after night while they sleep. And by the time they notice the signs, the process has already been running for years. The legs that used to feel powerful in the morning now feel thick and heavy before breakfast is even finished. The ankles that used to look normal at the end of the day now carry that familiar puffiness that everyone just calls getting older. The calf that cramps at night, the foot that feels cold even under the covers, the walk that gets shorter and shorter, not because of motivation, but because of something that starts aching a few blocks in. These are not random inconveniences. They are messages. And once you understand what they are actually saying, nothing about the way you end your day will ever look the same again. There is a specific biological event that happens in the legs of people over 60 during sleep that almost nobody talks about directly. Not in doctors' offices during rushed 15-minute appointments, not in the general conversation about healthy aging that focuses on diet and exercise, but never drills into the precise mechanics of what is happening inside your blood vessels after dark. And the silence around this topic is not because it is rare or irrelevant. It is because the symptoms are so familiar, so ordinary feeling, that both patients and physicians have quietly agreed to accept them as an unavoidable feature of the aging body, rather than a specific, addressable process with specific, effective solutions. That ends here. And if this kind of direct, research-grounded conversation about what is actually happening inside your body is what you have been looking for, hit like and subscribe right now. This is Dr. Victor Lang, and the entire purpose of this channel is to give you what the standard system rarely does, a real explanation, followed by real tools you can use tonight. So let us get into the mechanics, because the mechanics are where the power is. Your venous system, the network of vessels that carries blood back up toward your heart from your lower extremities, operates against a significant disadvantage. Blood flowing down your legs from your heart gets help from gravity. Blood trying to return from your feet back up through your calves, your thighs, and into your core has to fight gravity the entire way. The engineering solution your body developed for this problem is a series of tiny one-way valves embedded inside the veins of your legs. These valves open as blood moves upward and snap shut to prevent it from falling back down between heartbeats. When you walk, your calf muscles squeeze against the surrounding veins with every step, and these valves work together with that muscular compression to propel blood steadily upward. It is elegant, powerful, and remarkably effective, right up until the point when it starts to fail. And here is what aging does to that system. The connective tissue that gives those venous valves their structural integrity gradually weakens over the decades. The valves lose their tight seal. They begin to close incompletely. Blood, following the path of least resistance and the pull of gravity, begins to fall back between heartbeats, rather than staying where the valves pushed it. Over time, pressure builds in the lower leg veins. Fluid begins to leak out of the vessel walls into the surrounding tissue, and you end up with the chronic pooling, the chronic heaviness, the chronic end-of-day swelling that so many people over 60 have learned to simply live with. This condition has a clinical name, chronic venous insufficiency, and studies suggest it affects somewhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of all adults over 60, with the majority of those cases either undiagnosed or dismissed as a normal feature of aging. But here is the part of this story that most people never hear, and it is the part that changes everything. The nighttime is when venous insufficiency does its most significant damage. During the day, even compromised venous valves get help from movement. Every step, every shift of weight, every moment of activity engages the calf muscle pump and keeps blood moving upward with enough force to partially compensate for the weakened valves. But the moment you go horizontal and lie still for the night, that muscular pumping assistance disappears entirely. Your legs are still, flat, and dependent on a valve system that has lost its reliability. And blood that should be moving back toward your heart is instead pooling in your calves, sitting in your ankle tissue, building pressure in vessels that are already under strain. Your legs spend hours in this state, not resting and recovering the way people imagine sleep enables, but quietly starving for the circulation they need to repair the tissue damage of the day. This is why so many people over 60 wake up feeling worse than when they went to bed, not because sleep failed them, because their legs spent the night in a circulatory environment that could not support the restoration sleep was supposed to provide. Now add the arterial side of the picture, because this is where the stakes get genuinely serious. While your veins struggle to return blood upward, your arteries, the vessels that deliver oxygenated blood from your heart down to your legs, are undergoing their own age-related changes. Arterial walls stiffen. Small deposits accumulate inside the vessels. The smooth muscle lining of the arteries becomes less responsive to the signals that should dilate them when the legs need more blood. The result is reduced arterial blood flow to the lower extremities, particularly during the low activity periods when there is no muscular demand driving additional flow. When both systems are compromised simultaneously, the lower legs end up in a genuine oxygen deficit during sleep. Tissue repair slows, nerve function degrades, inflammation accumulates in the very structures your mobility depends on. The condition where arterial narrowing limits blood flow to the legs is called peripheral arterial disease, and its connection to broader cardiovascular risk is well established. The same processes narrowing the vessels in your legs are likely affecting the vessels serving your heart and brain. This is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to convey something important. The legs are not a separate compartment of the body. What happens in their vessels reflects what is happening throughout the entire system. And taking care of leg circulation is not just about comfort. It is about the long-term function of your cardiovascular system as a whole. Here is where everything shifts, because every single one of these processes is addressable, especially in that specific 30 to 60-minute window before you go to bed. The nighttime window, which most people spend passively watching television or scrolling before sleep, is one of the most powerful points of leverage in your entire 24-hour day for influencing what happens to your legs during the hours that follow. And once you understand why, you will never waste that window the same way again. The first intervention is movement, and its effect is immediate and measurable. Before you lie down, sit on the edge of your bed and spend 5 to 7 minutes activating the calf muscle pump deliberately. Flex your feet slowly, pointing your toes toward the floor, then pulling them back toward your shins, back and forth, 10 to 15 repetitions at a time. Circle your ankles in wide, slow rotations. Alternate between pressing your heels down while lifting your toes and pressing your toes down while lifting your heels. This sequence of movements activates the exact muscular mechanism your venous system depends on during the day, and doing it specifically before bed physically moves pooled blood out of your lower legs before the long stillness of sleep begins. The difference in morning swelling for people who adopt this practice consistently is not subtle. It is the kind of change you feel within the first week. After the movement, elevation. And this step is where a lot of well-intentioned people fall short because they think a small pillow under their feet counts as leg elevation. For venous return purposes, it does not. Your feet need to be above the level of your heart, not marginally above mattress level. Use a dedicated leg wedge, a stack of firm pillows under your calves and lower legs, or spend 10 to 15 minutes in what practitioners call legs up the wall, lying on your back with your legs resting vertically against the wall. This position uses pure gravity to drain pooled venous blood from the lower legs in a way that no calf exercise can fully replicate. It feels unusual at first. The results are not. When you then sleep with your legs elevated on a firm support, the overnight pooling that produces morning stiffness and swelling is substantially reduced because you have removed the starting volume of congestion and then kept gravity working in your favor through the night rather than against you. Now let us go into the biochemistry, because this is where the conversation about nighttime leg circulation goes somewhere most people have never been taken. There is a molecule inside your blood vessels called nitric oxide, and it is arguably the most important compound for vascular health that most people have never heard of. It is produced by the cells lining the interior walls of your arteries and veins, and its function is to signal those vessels to relax and dilate, opening wider to allow more blood to flow through with less resistance. When nitric oxide production is strong, your vessels are responsive, flexible, and efficient. When it declines, vessels stay narrower than they should, peripheral resistance increases, and blood flow to your extremities suffers. Age dramatically reduces nitric oxide production. The endothelial cells that make it lose efficiency. The biochemical pathways that stimulate its release become sluggish. And this decline is one of the primary reasons why arterial stiffness and peripheral circulation problems are so closely associated with getting older. The exciting part of this is that nitric oxide production can be specifically supported through dietary intervention, and the evening hours are a strategic time to make that investment. Leafy greens high in dietary nitrates, like spinach, arugula, and beet greens, provide raw material your body converts to nitric oxide through a pathway that bypasses the aging endothelial system entirely. Beet juice has been studied specifically in older adults for its effects on blood flow and vascular resistance, with documented improvements in circulation and exercise tolerance. Dark berries, tart cherries, and pomegranate are rich in anthocyanins and polyphenols that have been shown in clinical trials to improve endothelial function, reduce arterial stiffness, and lower the vascular inflammation that compounds circulatory decline. A small glass of tart cherry juice consumed 45 minutes before your bedtime routine does two things simultaneously. It delivers vascular supportive compounds at the precise time your blood vessels are preparing for the overnight period, and the natural melatonin in tart cherries supports deeper, more restorative sleep. Better sleep, in turn, reduces the inflammatory hormones that damage blood vessel walls, creating a positive cycle that compounds over time. The role of magnesium in this picture deserves its own moment, because magnesium deficiency is extraordinarily common in adults over 60, and the consequences for vascular health are direct and significant. Magnesium regulates the contractile tone of vascular smooth muscle, meaning it directly influences whether your blood vessel walls stay relaxed and open or contract into a narrower, higher resistance state. Low magnesium pushes the balance toward constriction. Blood pressure rises, peripheral resistance increases, microcirculation in the lower legs becomes less efficient. A warm Epsom salt foot soak before your leg routine addresses this from two directions at once. The warmth itself dilates the blood vessels of the feet and lower legs, improving local circulation, while the transdermal absorption of magnesium from the Epsom salt provides direct support to the vascular smooth muscle that governs vessel tone. 15 minutes in comfortably warm water, covering your feet and calves, is not a folk remedy. It is a physiologically coherent intervention with a real mechanism and real evidence behind it. There is a truth underneath all of this practical information that I think matters more than any single technique. Most of the leg problems people experience in their 60s and 70s are not accidents. They are the predictable outcomes of processes that were running quietly for years without proper attention, during exactly the window of time, the nighttime window, when the most meaningful intervention was always possible and almost never taken. The people who maintain strong, capable legs well into their 70s and 80s are not genetically exceptional. They are people who were given the right information and acted on it before the damage compounded past the point of easy reversal. The gap between those two outcomes is not years of medical intervention. It is often 30 minutes before bed, done consistently, with the understanding of why it matters. Think about what strong, functional legs actually represent in practical terms, not in the abstract sense of being healthy, but in the specific, concrete sense of what you are able to do and where you are able to go. The trail you can walk without your calves seizing up a mile in. The airport you can navigate without searching for moving walkways in the nearest seat. The grandchildren you can keep up with. The stairs you take without bracing yourself. The garden you can work in for 2 hours without your ankles swelling by afternoon. These are not minor quality of life details. They are the specific texture of a life that still belongs fully to you, a life where your body carries you toward what you want, rather than slowly negotiating the terms of your retreat from it. Circulatory decline in the legs does not take that life away in a single moment. it takes it away in the accumulation of small concessions, each one individually so reasonable that nobody marks the moment it happened. First, the long walks become shorter. Then the travel becomes more complicated. Then the activities that required being on your feet for hours become activities you watch rather than participate in. And somewhere along the way, the life you were living becomes the life you used to live. And the transition happens so gradually that it is almost impossible to point to exactly when it began. The good news, the genuinely important good news, is that you are reading this now. Before the concessions compound beyond what deliberate intervention can address, before the overnight deprivation in your lower legs has run long enough to cause the tissue changes that are harder to reverse, you have the mechanism, you have the tools, and you have the specific window every single evening where the trajectory of your leg health can be moved in a fundamentally different direction. Tonight, before you lie down, spend 5 minutes on the ankle pumps and calf activations. Elevate your legs for 10 minutes, genuinely above heart level. Take the warm foot soak if you can. Have something that supports your nitric oxide production in the early evening. Position your legs on an elevated support when you sleep. That is the whole thing. That is the shift that changes the overnight biology from deprivation to restoration. Not once, every night. Until it becomes the thing you do the way you do everything else that matters, without thinking twice about it. What happens in your legs tonight will compound into what your legs are capable of next year and the year after that. That is not a metaphor. That is the actual, measurable way that vascular health works. The direction of the compound depends entirely on what you do with the window you have. If this hit differently than the health content you usually come across, I want to hear about it in the comments. Tell me what you have been experiencing with your legs that finally makes sense now. Tell me what you are going to do differently tonight. And if there is someone in your life, a parent, a friend, a brother, a colleague, who has been quietly managing leg heaviness or swelling and blaming it on age without ever getting a real explanation, send them this video. Because the difference between knowing this and not knowing this is not just information. For a lot of people, it is the difference between a decade of full independence and a decade of watching that independence quietly narrow. Your legs have carried you your entire life. The question worth sitting with tonight is whether you are ready to carry them back.